we have about 30 minutes of presentation, and then we'll have a 30-minute Q&A. So please put your questions in. We'd love to hear from you. That's going to be a lot more fun when it's interactive. The second thing is that in your chat window, you should change the selection so that the chat goes to all participants and panelists. And I see that Conrad is already jumping on the chat, so I'm very happy about that. So let's start with a round from the panel. So to my left, we have Medina. Say a few words.
Hi, I'm Medina Sarvestani. I'm a postdoc at MPFI.
Ella.
Hi, I'm Ella Batty. I am a curriculum developer and lecturer in computational neuroscience at Harvard.
Tara.
Hi, I'm Sarah van Viegen, and I'm a postdoc at Princeton Neuroscience Institute.
And Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Waskom. I'm a postdoc at NYU.
Great. And I'm Patrick Mineault, and I am CTO of NMA. So we can start a presentation now, now that everybody has started to trickle in. Great. So many of you in the chat and online are, of course, participants of NMA, so you're intimately familiar with what is it that we're trying to build. So, of course, NMA is a massive online TA-led 3-week summer school with 1,700 interactive students. So it's quite a big deal. And as Conrad likes to say, you know, it was just a little work. So I wanted to take this this occasion to highlight the contributions of all these wonderful people that have made NMA possible, and just to tell you like what's going on behind the scenes and how our model is has been able to offer this summer school education to a very large number of people. So I'm going to be talking about how we could build a community at scale. Then Ella is going to be talking about the content creation. Michael is going to be talking about shipping these tutorials. Then Tara is going to be talking about shipping videos. And finally, Medina is going to be talking about execution at this scale. So I'm Patrick Mineault, and I am a computational neuroscientist, and I care about computation in the brain. So following my postdoc, I worked in industry for a number of years, went to do data science at Google, and then worked on DCI hardware at our presenting sponsor, Facebook Reality Labs, who we're very thankful for enabling NMA. I do technical things here, so I'm CTO at NMA. And my previous summer school experience was a CSHL, computational vision. So you can see a much younger, much more naive version of me in this picture next to Eros Simoncelli. So in order to make NMA work, we really had, one shot. There was just one window of opportunity to make this model happen, which was created by essentially the COVID situation. So a lot more people were receptive about creating an online summer school. And first edition of anything is always rough. So how do you skip ahead to a more polished experience? So we incorporate a lot of practices that we took from industry and also from the open source worlds. And we'll hear about all these different aspects during the presentation. How is online learning done conventionally? So the conventional model is really the MOOC, where a famous professor at a big university creates highly polished materials, which are then meant to be consumed asynchronously by potentially up to millions of people. And that has allowed quality education to be given to a lot of people at a very large scale for very cheap. However, there's none of that human element that we consider to be critical in real world education. and it requires exceptional motivation out of participants. So we know that up to 96% of people who start a MOOC never actually finish it. There's both a motivation question, but there's also an accessibility question that comes from that. So NMA uses a different model where the classroom is led by TA. So it's a close human experience, and we're targeting retention rates of 70% as opposed to 4% in the conventional MOOC model. But that means that having good interactions within a pod of student and TA is really critical. So how did we enable that? We had to look at, what are we trying to maximize or to optimize here? So we really want to make sure that the pod sizes were within certain bounds, that people who are at more advanced stages in their career had TAs, which were also at more advanced stages in their career. We needed people to not have to wake up in the middle of the night to follow their classes. And we also wanted to encourage people to interact in their own language, because we figured that both increases accessibility and also encourages people to continue interact. So to optimize this, we first considered, ILP-based approaches, but ended up with an approach really built on heuristics. So it was very important to validate the swapping method that we used automatically by tracking our progression on different objectives from day to day, and also to validate manually. So by manually inspecting what these pods look like, and this took place over the course of about 5 days, and it was really a round-the-clock effort. And we finished off by shipping it, giving the pods cool names, literally with the cool name package in Python, and staged the shipping so that if there was any problems in the pod composition, we would see it in a 10% sample of the population. So what did that shipping look like? We were able to create 184 pods with about a 9-to-1 student to TA ratio. And I think the thing that I'm most happy about is that we were able to create 57 language pods. So we know that more than half of our student population has English as a second language. And we were able to accommodate 13 different languages in different pods, including French, which is my first language. So I was very happy about that. And we were able to match the vast majority of TAs, 98% to their first preferred time zone, and 98% of students to their first or second preferred time zones. And I think the biggest hint that we have that this whole system really created a community is the art that we ask the students to create. So we just asked the students to create the logos for each of their pods. And of course, we gave them cool names to start with, and just highlighting the creativity and that feeling of community that they've been able to create. And I just want to show one in particular, which is the evasive seal that you see in the top right here. That is particularly close to my heart. So with that, I'm going to leave the stage to Ella, who's going to be talking about feeding these wonderful people in pods content.
Hi, I'm Ella. I recently got my PhD in computational neuroscience, where my research focused on machine learning for neural data analysis and modeling. And I'm currently a computational neuroscience curriculum developer and lecturer at Harvard for their PhD program in neuroscience. So I really love computational neuroscience and teaching computational neuroscience, so NeuroMatch was a great fit for me. So I'm going to be talking about the content pipeline. So there were many steps to our pipeline, as you can see in this figure here. I'm going to go through one step at a time. But basically, the idea behind having such a long pipeline was to have as many people see the content as possible before the students encountered it, to really iron out any problems ahead of time. So we started with content creation. So in April or May, a curriculum team decided what each day should cover. They then recruited content day chiefs who recruited content creators, and that to make various aspects of the day, such as the intro and outro lectures and the tutorial notebooks. that team came up with a one-page overview of the day to outline learning objectives and what would be covered. And then the team made the videos and tutorials. The structure of each day was decided by doing a test day first to figure out how many hours of Zoom one person can handle and so on. So after our content creators made the materials, we had content review. So about 30 volunteer reviewers gave us feedback, and then they gave micro feedback directly on slides and notebooks on things like problems in code, phrasing difficulties, and so on. But we found to elicit macro feedback, we really needed a specific feedback form that asked questions like, was there intuition built for the central modeling concepts of the tutorial? So that got people to really give us bigger picture feedback about what was and wasn't working. So after these reviewers, the content creators integrated, and then we had as many rounds as possible of reviewers giving feedback and content creators incorporating the feedback. We also had review day and week chiefs, and these people served as communication hubs between everyone, and they also made sure all the material for the day linked together nicely. So after content review, we had an editing stage that I'll talk about later, and then all the content went to pre-pod. So pre-pods were this unusual idea to have a full dress rehearsal of the course 3 weeks ahead of time. So 15 TAs sat through all of the materials and met daily with all the relevant content creators to give feedback and suggestions for improvement. So then we took all the pre-pod feedback and the content creators integrated that, did another round of recording their videos or incorporating into the tutorial notebooks. So then we had an editing stage for the tutorial notebooks. And while the intro and outro lectures went to the video team, which Tara will talk about later. So we had a small group of committed volunteers who served as tutorial editors. Our internal term for this was waxers, so you might have heard that elsewhere. And there are some unique challenges for being a tutorial editor, because basically these editors need computational neuroscience expertise so they can help with the content. They need Python expertise so they can really help with the actual code exercises and making interactive demos and so on. And they need teaching expertise so they can make sure everything works together to provide a good experience for the students. So once we found this kind of group of people with these expertises, editors did quite a few things to improve the student learning experience. So tutorial editors worked together to come up with a standardized template for tutorials. You can see our template style guide here. And we were very precise with this template, and we did this to reduce the cognitive load of the student. So basically, when a student looked at a new tutorial, they didn't have to waste time figuring out how to learn, like what goes where and the style of exercises. They could just focus on actually learning the materials. Tutorial editors also helped pare down content and allocated some as bonus to help prevent demoralization from the onslaught of material. And they had final say over changing exercises and text and so on to help clarify points of confusion. So we needed tutorial editors. So why did we need tutorial editors? Because you could just have a system where content creators were really responsible for finalizing their own content. But we found that communication with over 40 content creators and reviewers was very difficult, especially on a tight timeline about specific changes. And we needed a smaller group that could work efficiently together to incorporate videos into notebooks, standardize formatting, polish content, push to Git, and release. Also, content creators are experts in their field, and they created absolutely amazing content, but they also have so much domain knowledge that they might not always recognize what will confuse newcomers. And they might be more hesitant to cut down their own material because obviously it's related to their life's work. So editors provided just a new perspective to help iron out some of those difficulties. So we also did things based on feedback. So we took feedback from week 1 to update week 2 and week 3. We also had some very tight timelines for turnaround of feedback. So we had some Git issues. So this is one example where there was a problem with the tutorial access labeling. And it took 7 people and 3 hours to fix it, because basically a team of editors and content creators worked together in the hours before the tutorials went live to fix this problem in tutorials that would have created more confusion. I also searched for term confused in our Slack, and there were only over 500 messages that used confused or some derivative of that. And most of those messages were from editors talking to each other about what might confuse the students. So we really tried to put ourselves in the student mindset to figure out what things they may find difficult. So after this step, we had automated code checks, which Michael will talk about now.
Hi, so I'm Michael Waskom. I'm a postdoc at NYU. I'm a computational cognitive neuroscientist, and I'm interested in decision-making and its connection to learning and cognitive control. I also have a lot of experience contributing to open source scientific software, software for data visualization and for neuroimaging analysis. And I have a particular interest at the kind of intersection of those two worlds, how we can use modern software to improve the teaching of computational and statistical methods. So I was really excited to join the team at Neuromatch Academy. And I'm going to tell you about some of the problems I focused on in terms of publishing tutorials and how we can publish tutorials that we have confidence are going to work and be effective. So on the next slide, I have, what are the challenges here? Well, first, it doesn't matter how well crafted the exercises and tutorials are. If the code doesn't work, if the code doesn't run, the school's just not going to work. And while you might be able to recover from simple bugs in in-person summer school context where everyone is in the same room, at a global scale, it could be really fatal and just ruin a day for everyone. And the tutorials also posed some unique challenges. So as Ella just told you, every document was touched by multiple content creators and editors. It went through multiple iterations of testing and revision, and this all happened under significant time pressure. We put the whole course together in really just a few weeks. And on top of that, the tutorials that we wanted to publish were, in a sense, intentionally incomplete because of the structure of the exercises that we give to the students. And writing code in Jupyter Notebooks, while it has pedagogical benefits, it also has some distinct pitfalls that can make it challenging to produce functional documents. So the approach was to apply best practices from software development, try to automate everything that we can about the publishing workflow and verify everything that we can't. So the next slide has a set of steps that every tutorial that was submitted for publication went through before it went out to the students in Neuromatch Academy. These continuous integration or CI checks run on the GitHub platform, and they run each notebook through a set of checks and then final publication processes. So the first thing we do is just ask, can this notebook execute from top to bottom without encountering any errors if the exercises are solved correctly? And this catches some basic problems that could really just ruin an entire day of work. But then because the exercises are kind of non-functional by default, we can't test if they're correct by executing the code. So the next step is to actually go into the exercise text itself and ask whether it matches the solutions that we provide up to the missing parts that the students have to fill in. We also run each notebook through static analysis tools to check the code quality, to try to sniff out subtler bugs that students might encounter, but that don't break execution. And we also check the style of the code. We aim to provide code to students that was clear and comprehensible, which is really important in a teaching context. So if the tutorials pass these checks, they then go through a final automated stage that takes the versions that the instructors, the content creators, and the editors work on and produce what the students actually see. So that pulls the solutions out of the, the scripts, and any images they create out of the notebooks, saves them, embeds links to them in the tutorials, and then does some final polishing. But if you don't get to that stage, then you'll see some error reports, and we try to give actionable feedback to the editors. So the workflow doesn't just block us from publishing broken content, but also aims to help us make the content better. There's some examples here of what it looks like if the notebook fails the execution test or the exercise verification test. And at times, this could be a little bit frustrating. So if you dig into the Git commit history, you might find some expressions of that frustration. But the aim here was to frustrate the editors and the content creators, not to frustrate the students. We tried to do everything we could to publish functional documents that were as helpful as possible. And if you look at what we ended up with, I think everyone who was involved in this process, and there were many people, should be really proud of the final product. And the next slide just shows a few examples of some of the features of our notebooks. They're really engaging and interactive. We don't just give students code and say, look at this. This is implementing a model. We actually ask them to go in and write the code themselves that does it. And we give them these interactive widgets where they can play around with the parameters of the models and try to build some intuition about what they're doing. All this is happening in the context where there's clear math that's rendered with LaTeX, and the tutorial videos are embedded right there, so students can work within a single tab and not have to incur context switch costs. And so those videos were put together by Tara, and she's going to walk you through that process now.
Yeah, so my name is Tara van Viegen, and I unfortunately do not have a picture of a summer school that I was able to attend, because I used to go to Art Academy before I switched to academia, and part of the reason that I switched to the academia, to the academic world, is that I got pregnant, and I decided to carve out, some more security. I didn't know much at the time for myself and my family. And I think that gives me a really special perspective, and might also be related why I care so much about equity and diversity. And throughout my professional career, I focused on rhythmicity in the brain. And I did my PhD at the University of Birmingham in the UK, where I looked at time perception and post-error adjustments. And currently I'm a postdoc at the Neuroscience of Attention and Perception Lab at Princeton University. At NMA, I am the volunteer coordinator, and I'm also the head of video production. And that's why I am talking to you today about the video processing pipeline. And I want to start off with saying a little bit about the audio, because as you are by now all aware, Zoom, for example, is a great tool, but it can also be quite frustrating if there are breakups in the audio. So we really wanted to provide better quality for the lecturers and for the recordings that they did. So I want to highlight the audio visual techs here that worked on this. And this is a picture of the setup of Patrick, where he was testing all the affordable microphones that were available on Amazon that we could then recommend to our lecturers. And these microphones were provided with clear instructions of how to use them. And for the post-processing, we had a video editing team of about 20 people. Next, I will tell you a little bit about how these videos came about and how that editing worked. So we used a particular software for that called WeVideo, and we also provided a standard format of the slides. And I think some of the lecturers will remember fondly how there were two versions of the slides, which was incredibly confusing. But the reason that I'm highlighting them here is because they had these gray boxes, one where you could put the lecturer feed in the top right where it says face, and the other one where there was space for the captions. And I'm not going to name any names, but there's always people that then remove that bar at the bottom because they don't understand what it's doing there. So I think Madineh's effort later on is also going to highlight really how important that communication process is across these different hierarchies in the steps of leading to this effort of having a finished product that is really nice for the students to have. So next I'm going to say something about how this content ended up on YouTube. Because I talked already about the editing, the uploading was actually relatively straightforward. And after that uploading, there was kind of like a splash treatment. Like we really wanted to have them kind of carry the stamp that it was recognizable content for everyone, that this belonged to NMA. And we did that by providing them with a video description, which you can see here. And part of the description is a description of what was being used in the video. We had a shout out in there to the people that actually contributed. It's like credits to them for editing, but also for providing captions and translations. We linked back to the tutorials and to the playlist that these videos were part of, because we really wanted to prevent our students from getting lost in the materials. And then there was a general description from the videos about the school. And I had help from these people highlighted here with this process as well. The final step in making this come together in this coherent framework were these thumbnails that I think are really recognizable across all the materials that we've pushed out. And the final thing that I want to talk about is the captions and the translations. So here you can see, I already showed a snapshot of this yesterday, but I've updated it now. So by now we have 25,500 view hours, and 37% are being watched with English captions. And it's really important to highlight here that this captioning is a really time-consuming process, because manually adjusting captions takes about half an hour for 10 minutes of video. And I want to emphasize here that there are 20 different people in the captioning group and another 20 in the translations group. And Madineh is going to take over now and talk about how to lead all these people and to make sure no one gets lost. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks, everyone. I'm Medina Sarvestani. I'm a postdoc at the Max Planck Florida Institute for Neuroscience. My background is in engineering, but my research now focuses on studying the entire visual system as a whole. I'm also an alum of the Cold Spring Harbor Computational Neuroscience course, famous for their water guns. And I liked the summer school so much that I was a student at that course, and then I was a TA. And like a lot of other people, I was going to teach at one of these courses this summer that got canceled. So I was happy to join these efforts instead. And I did sort of a couple of different things at NMA. I started in content review and editing, but as you heard from Ella and Michael and Patrick, some really talented people were recruited to take that on. So I left that effort early on. I then moved to copyright, some professional development. And the point here is that a lot of us at NMA sort of did a lot of this sort of meta organizing, because there was a lot to do. There's a lot of volunteers, and all of this effort had to be organized quickly with time pressure. So how did we recruit all the volunteers? Mostly through social media. So this is a Twitter post that Megan Peters, one of the organizers, you guys all know at this point, put out to recruit volunteers. And we did this a couple of times through a couple different accounts, and you guys have all probably seen this. And when we did this, it really worked. So we had really an onslaught of fire hose of volunteers that answered these calls. And we really sort of built a family. And actually Zach Pitko's dad made this video of all of the volunteers here, well, at the time. Okay. Oh. So how do we organize all of this effort? We had something like 150 to 200 active people, and we communicated on Slack because we were in different situations and time zones. And so you can see in this chart Tara pulled out that in the couple weeks leading up to NMA, daily communication was happening between 140 to 180 people. So that's not nothing. And you sometimes you would leave your chair for an hour and come back to 30 messages. So how do you build structure into this? So you post to social media and you onboard onto Slack and NMA, and these are volunteers with other day jobs, and they come on board and they're immediately overwhelmed with just how much work there is and how much NMA is trying to do. So the first thing that I and other sort of team leaders were doing is to assess the skill set of volunteers and also their time availability. And we did this sort of continuously because this is a volunteer effort and a lot of people were busy in other ways. We held in-person or over Zoom training sessions when necessary to get everybody on the same page and sort of assign a hierarchy, chiefs when possible, so people had clear responsibility and agency, and that really worked in our favor. And then we would divide and conquer, and of course, over a 3-month period, you can't maintain the same set of volunteers. So then we would iterate, again, post to social media, get a new set of volunteers, and go through the whole process again. And so how well did we do? We'll do the full evaluation post hoc, and actually I'm not involved in that process. There's a whole team for it. Based on the daily reflections that we have been looking at and will continue to look at, attendance sheets, post-student surveys and interviews, But for now, we have some early signs, a sort of a midway progress report. So of the 1,734 interactive students, 68% have decided to be part of the project groups. And what this means is that the large fraction of students are engaged enough and interested enough in the material that we've been teaching to decide to take on essentially additional work, even though they're super busy and exhausted, to continue to learn from the tutorials. Our video watch retention is 80% based on YouTube analytics. And you can see in this figure that it sort of waxes and wanes over the weekends, but it peaks during the week. Our traffic on all the servers are high, I'll just say that. And we have been, again, this is other teams, I haven't been involved, but we have been monitoring how the pods are doing, how the students are doing, the TAs are doing daily. And we've only had to intervene in really very few set of cases, and we're fortunate to have a really good student population that gets along. And I think the most critical point here is that we expect a 70% course completion, so 70% of the students will complete the course, and that's about an order of magnitude, more than an order of magnitude higher than the average completion rate for MOOC. So that's great. Okay, and I'll end there. And I have my controls back, that's great. And I think we wanted to do a poll at this point. Poll the audience, yeah? Okay, so let me activate. So I've launched this poll here, which you should all be able to see and participate in, about how many person hours the audience thinks is involved in one content day. And let's give that a minute and open up for Q&A. I haven't seen the chat thread because I was sharing my screen, but okay, so let's jump to the Q&A and we'll come back to that poll. That'll be fun. Okay, and I'll just relay the questions, and if any of you guys want to jump in and answer. The first question is from Buto Benz. Does the more than certain continuation of NMA in a post-COVID era mean the end of still valuable in-person summer schools like Cosmo? Who wants to take that one? I'll start out. I mean, I can't speak for the organizers of these courses or for the future of COVID in this country or other countries for that matter. But I don't think necessarily so. I think there's still a lot you can gain from summer schools, especially the network that you build. I mean, NMA is a community and a family. I've certainly built my network, but there's still something to in-person interactions that that the online format can't quite replicate, but we'll see. Okay. Yeah.
So one model that's kind of interesting is a hybrid model in which some of the materials which are created at NMA can be used in an in-person school. So as you've all seen, there's a lot of thought that was put into each of the tutorials, and so those materials are probably have more embedded work in them or work hours in them than is reasonable for a small organization running a single summer school to actually run. So it is possible to reuse these materials, and we do license them as CC BY, which becomes very easy for people to run summer schools which are based off of these materials. Of course, they cannot be branded as NMA unless they're done by NMA, but it does offer possibilities if summer schools want to use these materials.
Anyone else? That's a good point. Thanks, Patrick. The next most uploaded is from Farid. And he's asking, this is fun, what was the most what was the most surprising feedback gotten once the course went live?
I think just the breadth of feedback was surprising. We had a lot of people say the tutorials were way too much, way too difficult, and so on. And then we had some people say that they were too easy and they were bored. So I don't think we quite expected that there would be that much diversity of experiences. And also shows the difficulty of optimizing content for that array of students.
Absolutely. Michael, you were also a TA. Did you get any surprising feedback?
I was going to say essentially what Ella said, which is that one of the challenges in incorporating the feedback both from the test days, the pre-pod and the phase day, and from the feedback that we get in the daily reflections is knowing how to find the happy medium between all of the different reactions that people have. One of the things I'm kind of excited about in the future is the potential of kind of making different versions of NMA that can be tailored to the diversity of the student population that we have in terms of their background and their stage and their interests. I think there's some clear demand for that.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go to the next question. This is from Marcelo. We know him. In your opinion, what were the most important technological resources, project management tools, chat, to-do list, indicators that allowed such a well-coordinated effort to succeed? If you guys don't mind, I'll go first and then everyone else. I actually thought it was interesting because we ended up landing on the most simple and basic tools. And I think actually Patrick specifically can talk about kind of other higher level tools that he used. But for everyday communication across the larger groups, we use things like Google Calendar and Google Sheets and Google Spreadsheets, and they were very effective because they were easily accessible. Everyone could see and edit them easily, and we really didn't get fancy.
So we experimented in earlier days with Choir, and actually I think that was quite important at the start of NMA. But as we grew larger and larger, I think the accessibility of the tools was more important than the particular tool in question. One thing that I would like to very strongly caution people against is don't use Google Sheets as a database. That is just a recipe for disaster. And it's something that happened, I think, in the first month of NMA. That was particularly the case. And that created a lot of technical debt that we have to deal with after. So eventually we migrated to databases like Airtable and also Firebase, which is another Google product for large-scale databases. So, because you really need structured data, and there's nothing worse than a Google Sheet with 10 different tabs, and that are meant for humans rather than machines.
Can I add something to this? Because I think, yeah, part of the volunteer coordination that I did for Neuromatch Academy was also using a Google form. Whenever Patrick mentions that, I almost break out in tears because it's been really traumatizing. So I'm really happy that we have a much better alternative for that now. But I think what was really cool about that is that as part of our onboarding people to Slack, so from this volunteer effort that we recruited from Twitter and mouth to mouth, is that people got onboarded onto Slack, and then they filled out this form, and it gave us an idea of what they wanted to contribute to and what they were, where their qualities were, what their skills were. In behind the scenes, that was sometimes referred to as Tara's list, and that was really cool because then I would just get like from Brad Whibble, for example, a Slack message saying, "Hey Tara, I need someone that can do this and that can spend this much time on it. Can you find that person for me?" And stuff like this is just really, really helpful for these skills, even though it's simple. And another really fun fact to share is that Patrick has been often referring to Neuromatch Academy as an anarchist hacker spaceship. And I think that really kind of shows that this was really a grassroots effort. And I mean, of course, there's been, especially in the organizational structure, people that are much more established, but it was such a great feeling to be part of the organization at that level where you're constantly contributing and where you can have such a huge impact on so many people. Just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I want to build on that too. I think probably Slack was the most important tool just because it let us talk to each other. And I think one of the things that I've liked so much about NMA is just how collaborative it's been, and like people really just saying, you know, there's a problem, let's like put our heads together and solve it and do what we can and just work it out together. And the technical, like the technology is just how do you talk to people that are sheltering in place somewhere else in the world, and Slack and Zoom really were all we needed for a lot of that.
Okay, let's reveal the poll results. Can everyone see that? Okay, so about 10% of people are guessing less than 100 hours, 26% 100 to 200, 40% majority 200 to 300, and the rest more than 300. And I'll ask Patrick to reveal the guesstimate answer.
Yeah, so that's actually a pretty tough question to have because we're such a decentralized organization that getting all the numbers in is pretty tough. Already in the pre-pods, you know, about 20 TAs, I believe is the number, looked at the tutorials for 6 hours a day. So that's already 120 person hours. Writing a day's tutorials probably takes between 40 and 80 hours. Creating the videos themselves and the presentations that come with them is another 40 hours. Then there's the review stage and the waxing stage, or rather editing stage, which probably accounts for about 40 to 50 hours, and as well as the video editing and captioning stage, which takes 10 to 15 hours depending on the day. So it all adds up to 300 hours or more, depending on the amount of overhead that we have through communication. So obviously, you know, this is a team effort. Like if like doing this for oneself would be yeah, don't do this by yourself. Like clearly it took a village to actually get this going, and I'm extremely grateful for everyone that helped make that happen.
Great. There's one question I accidentally typed that it was answered. Daniel, we know Daniel, is asking if there were any tools that we wish we had but that don't exist yet. Also, are there parts of the Teach stack that have particularly large room for improvement, in your opinion? So let's break those up into the wish list for tools and then the room for improvement. And I'd like to hear from Tara first about a wish list for tools, and then everyone else.
I mean, part of the wish list would be for lecturers to really listen to the feedback that they are given. Because we did this test run, right? And it was an amazing opportunity to give feedback to our lecturers. But it can also be a little bit frustrating if then your lecturers don't actually deliver. So I'm not going to name any names, but just for the people, I think it's really fun to know. One of our lecturers handed in a final product that was 40 minutes for an outro video or an intro video. And these videos are supposed to be 30 minutes. So what we actually did in post-processing is we sped this lecture up at 1.25 the speed, so that now the video is actually a little bit shorter and more acceptable within the range and the error that we set. But another thing that would be really, really amazing to have, I think, on the tech stack side of things for the video production team would be to have a software where the editing is actually a little bit more refined. And it sounds a little bit silly because on the one hand, you want to be able to have people that don't actually have a background in this particular skill to be able to do it. But with the software that we used, even though it was good enough for what we did, it would have been really helpful if we could get a little bit more control. And I think on the audio side, it was a little bit easier because you can go as crazy as you want with the software that we had. And that was software that's freely available to everyone. Whereas, yeah, on the video side, we didn't have that luxury. So that would be amazing if we can get something like that.
I also just want to add, I think it's not a teaching stack, but Slack is amazing in many ways, but I think there still need to be more improvements about like categorizing importance of messages, because we just had so many volunteers doing so much, but even with separate channels, some of the really important messages got lost into less important messages that still belonged on that. So I think there is probably a tool or addition to Slack that would better allow like prioritizations of which messages people actually read. And that would be very helpful.
One thing I'll say, go ahead, Patrick.
Oh, I wanted to say, because I know Conrad's in the audience, I want Crowdcast from 3 months ago. That would be the tool that I would really love.
Seconded. Okay, great. Let's move on because we have a couple open questions and we're close to running out of time. This is a good question. Any idea why there's 32% of the students who chose not to engage in the projects? So I can, yeah, go ahead.
I think we wanted to make it possible to have the full summer school experience where you're, trapped on Long Island at Cold Spring Harbor or at Woods Hole, and your whole life is the course. But obviously, something that's different about NMA is that people are living at home and they have families and they have things they need to attend to and can't just ignore. And so I think some of the people felt like it was better to balance the real life with the course in a way that let them get everything they could out of the curriculum part of it by not doing the project.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit of that because I agree that with the real life responsibilities with respect to families, but I think one of the things that we notice from our student feedback is that it's actually the senior people and their surroundings that are pulling them back and saying like, oh, you are with only 1 foot in that summer school because you are actually physically still here. So why don't you spend a couple of hours in the lab? So if you're a senior lecturer that is listening, please leave your students alone. They're already going through a lot with Neuromatch Academy. So give them the time and space to participate in the school fully instead of pulling them back in the lab. Thank you.
I will say that for the students who are going through the projects, I think it's been working well so far. I was not sure how well it would come off over Zoom and whether you'd be really able to have the kind of dynamic collaborations with strangers over Zoom that form in person. And at least I'm a TA, and at least in my pod, I'm pretty excited about what the 2 project groups are coming up with. And I think the other TAs I've spoken to, many feel similar. So I think it's cool that that's working.
I agree. I've heard from some of the groups I'm mentoring too that they may not finish their project all the way to what they had hoped they would do because they'd rather spend time on the tutorials, but they've set up infrastructure in place to continue to work on the project together after the course, which is really, really great to see. Okay, so this question is related. Fred is asking, how did you choose the course length and content? Do you think that extending the school for an extra week would have allowed for more comprehensive learning? So I know that there was a lot of this discussion early on, but I was not a part of it. Does anyone want to?
So I was there in the early days of curriculum. I was not part of curriculum back in those days, but I did see it. So Conrad started actually with just a poll of what is it that that people want to learn in a summer school, and essentially aggregated the results and then created a basic outline with Gunnar, and that was also partially based off of the material that was covered in Cosmo, which is a physical summer school where in addition to Gunnar and Conrad, Megan and Paul Schrader were also people that participated as lecturers. So it was a combination of this previous experience that had been created, and as well as what we learned on our first test run day, which was on May 22nd, that we decided like what amount of material should be covered in the day. But you know, to get back to the question where we're like, when somebody asked like, what was the most surprising feedback? I can tell you that the least surprising feedback to me is that there's a lot of material. So I think that we all expected that to a large degree, and I think spacing it out would be good. But there are a lot of other constraints as well. So, for instance, for people with childcare duties, you know, 3 weeks versus 4 weeks can be a big deal. We also know of a lot of people that actually took time off. You know, some of our TAs have day jobs and they took time off during NMA, and obviously 3 weeks versus 4 weeks is a big deal for them. So, you know, these are trade-offs, and so we can look, I think, with hindsight as to like whether some of these decisions were the right ones. But I think given where we were in time and space, 3 weeks is probably about right.
Yeah, I mean, each of the days' content on most of the days could be an entire graduate course if you really want to, you know, fully understand it. And so we're not going to be able to do it justice in a summer school context. But I think that the selection of curriculum that the curriculum team came up with is a phenomenal introduction to important topics in the field, and hopefully will direct students to new ideas and papers they weren't aware of, and, you know, continue thinking about the models after they're done with the course.
Great, and I got a blue screen of death and had to switch accounts, so I have lost the Q&A. So someone else please relay the rest.
So one is, what is the best way to get involved with future NeuroMatch events? I think most of us probably were onboarded through Twitter, so tweet at people, but there's probably a more formal process.
Yeah, so we also have the website where a lot of job opportunities for volunteers are posted, which you can use. But I mean, Ella is right. And also, you know, especially I got a Prakriti Nayak who has been helping in the video crew. I sent her the Airtable link. So we're currently in the process of really capturing who has been involved in this effort and in what ways they contributed. And I sent that link out, and then she wrote me in a private message in Slack. I hope she's okay with me sharing this because I actually didn't check that beforehand. But she wrote that yeah, it felt like this was like a goodbye, and she was really concerned because she really wants to contribute to NMA 2.0. So people that are part of this. Yeah, exactly. It's not a goodbye at all. Megan is also already writing. You will be, you know, you're on our list, so we will also be able to find you. But if you want to engage now, then you can, send people a message or an email. That's completely fine.
Thanks, Tara. And Megan put a link to the website where there's an actual volunteer form you can fill out to get on the list now. Or as you guys said, I mean, we have a very visible front on Twitter from various people and the NeuroMatch account itself. So you can always reach out there, and don't worry, we'll find you. And someone in the chat is saying it won't be much work. It's true. It's just a couple hours a week.
So then there's a question about data on the completion rate of observers. I believe we don't have that because the observers could just take it at their own pace. But someone correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's correct. So we don't have any tracking data that's specific to observers, although there is a part of the evaluation plan which does have to do with tracking what the observers did. We expect them to be closer to what we expect out of MOOCs, so about 4%. So, but it is, however, a long burn kind of situation in which, many more people can have access to this data over a very long period of time. So it could be potentially tens of thousands of people that have access to the data. Now, if a few thousand of them like really truly benefit from the tutorials, then I think it's still a win. The one thing that I would say would probably really help observers feel a greater sense of community is matching. And of course, the NeuroMatch brand is based off of this idea of matching people with like-minded individuals that are, that might share some interesting ideas. And that's definitely in the works. If I think we could do observer pods next year, that would probably be the easiest win to increase people's completion rates for observers.
And then we can end on a positive note. There's a question about, is there a way to keep the momentum going after NMA, keeping the community spirit and the awesome energy? Next year's NMA.
I mean, Brett also already pointed out in the chat that our efforts for NMA 1.0 are definitely not done yet, right? So we're still doing so much work to analyze all the data that we have on our students, and all of the things that we talked about today should hopefully also lead to publications. So this is gonna last, and yeah, I think also Megan is doing an amazing effort in leading this, steering this ship. I've been joking with her a little bit about how crazy this endeavor has been. She's like steering as a captain this ship, and it's like so big. But yeah, I think I really want to shout that out, that she's doing an amazing job. And we all feel that spirit of NMA as well. So I think that is also going to be an important drive in keeping this going. I do think I should speak for myself though, that I also really need a break. So hopefully we can have like, a couple of days where we can just sleep. And Madineh also already said clean the house. I should too. So I think that's really important. But this is definitely continuing. And for students to stay connected to each other, my current understanding, but Patrick might know more about it, is that NeuroStars is there to stay. So that is also definitely, someone already also wrote that in the chat, that's a place where you can stay connected. And I also got a text message from someone saying, oh, we actually started this Telegram group after the Facebook Reality Labs presentation. You can also take the initiative here to build that network. And I hope that NeuroMatch Academy has done a good job in creating the avenues where you can do that. And if not, you can always let us know, because I think we've showed also very open to feedback. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
And there's also Twitter and social media, and eventually probably in-person national and international conferences again. So just like a summer school, maybe there's no explicit plan to stay in touch, but we'll all cross paths again and see each other.
Yeah, and I would like to say that I think that, when we're thinking about what's going to happen next year, the way that I like to think about it, and I know that's like very scary, is like, what if we wanted to run like 10 of these in parallel? And I'm not saying that that's part of our plans, it's not, but like, let's think about a second, like what would it entail? And what I want to say is like, let's build that, and like maybe it's something that we can give to other communities as well as maintaining our sanity for the next version of NMA, so that we don't spend a lot of time on difficult tasks that require a lot of human intervention. So I think building is going to be a big part of allowing this to go forward for next year. So if you're a builder of anything, please contact me.
Okay, great. So we're just about out of time, and I would love to stay on time. So if everyone's okay, we'll just log off, and thank you to the panelists, and thank you for the audience and everyone who participated in the chat. Thank you, Megan, Brad, Conrad. so many other people in the M&A community, organizers and volunteers that helped everyone make this happen, and to the students, most importantly. Bye, guys.